get started. You got your hand up? Yeah. I get it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. Yeah. Welcome to another informational night on our first Wednesday of the month. This month we have Ms. Stacy. She's from the Department of Health and Human Service. She's going to talk more to us about mental health and mental health stigma. Introduce Ms. Stacy.
So we're doing reducing stigma in. Like he said, I'm Stacy. Been with the state now 12 years. Yeah, 12 years. I have.
You don't mind standing behind that pole. That's right, we got you. I know you don't want your voice to be heard on.
Okay. So I've been, like I said, a social worker since 1995. I'm licensed in South Carolina. North Carolina doesn't recognize South Carolina licenses, so in South Carolina, I have an LBSW. In North Carolina, I just have a BSW. My passion, what made me go into social work is the elderly, because we kept my granny until she passed away. So we were just raised the Southern way. You know, you take care of your loved ones, keep them at home. My parents just passed away, my father in January and my mom April of this year. Been a hard year. So our division's name, our group, our team name is Community Engagement and Empowerment. So we do a lot of trainings in the community. We do mental health first aid. Like I was telling Bobby, that is an 8-hour course. Trying to get it down to 6, but it's taught through, you have to be certified through Mental Health Association. Kind of stuck with how long it is. But that, if y'all want that, I don't mind doing it. Let's see, our division is the Department of Mental Health, IDD, which is Developmental Disabilities, and we changed the SAS to SUS. That has been passed now through legislation, so we're now substance use services, not substance abuse, because we're trying to take the stigma out of just mental health and substance, out of all of it. So this is going to be more of a discussion than it's going to be me just standing up here lecturing. So I need y'all to talk to me, okay? Your next slide on your paper, this is how you can stay in touch with the division, the department. We have Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And I can send you a link to I can send the presentation out, so all the links in the presentation will work. So we're going to, our learning objectives are describe what stigma is and its root causes, describe the effects of stigma, internal and external stigma, and apply practical ways to decrease stigma in the community. So, mental health and substance use. These numbers are from pre-pandemic. The post-pandemic numbers have not come in yet, or if they're in, they haven't gotten the reports out yet. So estimates indicate that as many as 1 out of 5 Americans will experience a mental health issue, will misuse drugs or alcohol within a given year. And 1 out of 2 during a lifetime. So I think now it is 1 out of 4 is what I've heard unofficially. Estimates indicate that as many as 1 out of 5 Americans have some form of disability. And data shows high rates of comorbidity, substance use disorders, and anxiety disorders, which include generalized anxiety disorders, panic disorders, and post-traumatic stress disorders. A lot of googly got right there. Questions? Anything?
So, I know you mentioned about the IDD.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get categorized into IDD?
So intellectual developmental disabilities is generally your children that are born with some kind of difficulty, whether it be Down syndrome, spina bifida, cerebral palsy. They may be born as a drug baby or alcohol baby. A lot of children end up with TBIs, traumatic brain injuries. I had one. We didn't have, back then, you know, I'm from the generation where we wore no helmets, we didn't have seat belts, we drank out of the garden hose, and my mom locked us out of the house until the firefighters came out. So, you see me struggle sometimes with words. That's part of my disability, and the only thing I had back then was I had a massive concussion, is what the doctors called it. So all of those can cause somebody to get into the IDD waiver. Yeah.
I know, because now the IDD team is supposed to be the high form of mental development. Do adults get IDD?
No, see, adults would be classified as a traumatic brain injury or an accident. I mean, they would be have developmental disabilities, especially if they're in a car wreck but if it occurs after the age of 18, 21, you're an adult, so you fall in the adult category. Any other questions? Okay. So in the first year of COVID-19 pandemic, global prevalence of anxiety and depression increased by a massive 25%. Do you think it has decreased any? No. Yeah. Youth as young as 4 and 5 have anxiety, have depression. We have 5-year-olds that have completed suicide. Have completed suicide. So suicide affects from young, very young, to your aged. 5 years old. So a 5-year-old could run out into the traffic. They could take medicine that mom and dad may have laying around. They could drink alcohol. I mean, it's their way of hurting themselves, of killing themselves, will be less.
But they would know that they are trying to kill themselves. They'll just be taking it like the alcohol. They'll just be doing it because they see it and they can reach in.
But what I will say is, I don't think they know that they won't get up. I think they know they're in pain. I think they know they don't feel right. And they see, on commercials, on games. And games are very dangerous, in my opinion, because they're very realistic. People get shot, and then the next scene, they're back up and running. So little ones don't have the capability of understanding that death is death. But that we do have them, that have anxiety, that have depression, that don't want to be here anymore, just want to go to sleep. Well, mom takes these pills to go to sleep. That's why we encourage everybody, grandparents, aunts, uncles, anybody who's adult who's on medication to block their medicine. Because, you know, sometimes medicine's bright and colorful, right? Think it's candy, Skittles, M&M's, and it's not. So we encourage everybody to lock up their medicines, and definitely put them up higher than where you would normally put them. Does that make sense? So do you think women have worse anxiety and depression than men?
Yes.
Yeah, they do, because they, now this is just my opinion, most of the time when you see a woman, she's the housekeeper, and she's taking care of the kids, while the man out there doing the hard labor. So that would be good.
I had to think of, I think if this is your lovely wife, I believe she has something to add. I heard a moan.
I guess genetically, right, genetically, there's certain imbalances.
Yes, women have hormones. But you cannot blame everything on our hormones. There are only certain times of the year and month that you can blame hormones. That's, you know, we may use it a lot, but no. But yes, women do have more anxiety. And though, because we talk about it more, so it's more prevalent, and, you know, we have better data on it. Men think they have to be stoic and do all that manly stuff, and they don't want to talk about it. So that's why we're assuming that women have more. But, you know, men are getting younger. No. Yeah, in a way, yes, but in a way, no. No. So there you got to live with these people. Right.
Because it's probably just as much stress on men as it is women, because men are in a position where they feel they have to provide, they have to be macho, they have to be this, they have to be that, and it's not always the case that they are. So they're stressing too, they just will not show it, and most of the time will never talk about it.
Right.
Because
And-
they feel like it's a sign of weakness.
And is it a sign of weakness?
No.
No.
Not nowadays, it's not.
It never has been.
No.
But back in the day, it was, you know, if you cry, good.
I can put it one.
But,
But it's never and should have never been
right,
considered a weakness.
right,
Everybody needs help sometime.
that's true.
I feel like that's such a generational thing as well, because I think that younger generations are more prone to speak about it, primarily because they're more open to the concept of, you know, I need to talk about this, or I need to get this situation out, or whatnot. I do find that, I mean, I think a lot of it is just, and kind of like what Norm was saying, it's very generational. Like there's been a changing of the times, and the tide has definitely shifted.
Yes, the tides have shifted, and today men and women are more open. And yes, the generation from World War II, Vietnam, Korea, they were more stoic because they were raised. I mean, my mom was raised with, her mother was born in 1900. So she was raised with those values of the 1800, 1900 values, which she in turn raised us. I can remember I was hurt. My mother, as we walk off, my mom was like, "Don't you cry." Because she didn't want anybody to know. I don't know why. Let me tell you, when I walked through that door, I boo-hooed like something happened, but it's just the way it is. I mean, that was it. But now kids, my nieces and nephews, they will talk about how they're feeling, which is a good thing, which means we're reducing some stigma. We have a long way to go. We have a long way to get people to not look at people with mental health diagnosis or with substance use disorders as they're damaged. You know, they choose that. How many people in here would go to bed tonight, think about it and say, ooh, tomorrow morning I'm gonna wake up and be a crackhead? That just sounds fun. Nobody, right? Nobody's gonna go to bed tonight think, oh, I'm gonna be schizophrenic in the morning because I just want to. Right? None of us would do that. Do you think they went to bed thinking that's what they want to grow up as? No. We have youth with substance use disorder as young as 9 and 10. They were introduced, yes?
So now with the interaction of drugs and mental health, I know they got this thing out it's called schizoaffective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they treat you, how do they treat you with both of them?
I am not a medical doctor. I have stayed at the Holiday Inn Express, but I do not know the answer to that. It has to do, I would assume, medications, counseling, and a lot of hard work. Because mental health is just a diagnosis, just like cancer, just like diabetes. It's not a choice. And the schizoaffective disorder falls under the psychosis umbrella. So you've got the umbrella of psychosis, and then you've got bipolar, and you've got schizoaffective disorder, and you've got schizophrenia. They all fall under there, and they all require medical attention.
Ma'am, can I tell you something?
Yes, ma'am.
I went to the doctor about a couple of months ago. And so I was sitting there, and the doctor said, took the test, blew my hand and squeezed my hand and stuff. Said, your mama got early stages of Alzheimer's. I said, yeah. I said, come, I got all of this. I said, if I had all of this, I couldn't remember how to get up. I couldn't get up and go to work. I couldn't do nothing. I said, if I got all this, I got this. Then they said, well, your body's messed up. We got to operate on your back. If we don't operate on you, you'll be paralyzed from the neck all the way down to nothing. I said, I'm not. I said, my stuff happened to me. I was in a couple of bus wrecks, car wrecks, hit by a truck. When I played with the baby girls, I've been through a whole lot of stuff that people ain't been through. I said, I told them, I said, this. I said, if I had all this stuff, well, y'all told me, how come I ain't laying up, laying down, and did you understand what the specialist said? I said, mm-hmm. I said, I heard every word. But I said, ain't nobody cutting on my back, because I got scoliosis in my back. Where your spine is crooked when you were born, mine has always been that way. So I told my they're not gonna operate on me. I said, if you hit the wrong spot on me, I'm paralyzed. And you ain't gonna be able to do nothing for me. They did. I said, all thing y'all do is try to slip me in a nursing home somewhere. But that's one thing y'all ain't gonna do. And I told them, as long as I'm able to get them to work, baby, I'd be 73 years old. I can walk around here. I do anything I want to do. I can cook. I used to cook for the city bus stop. Everything. I do anything I want to do for me. And I got told I ain't let nobody mess me up.
And if you've got a diagnosis of early Alzheimer's, I would suggest you go get a second opinion.
Oh, I did. They told me I ain't had none of it.
So just remember, always, if you don't like what one doctor says, go find another one. Not that you're hunting for the right, I mean, sometimes you end up with it. There's no rhyme or reason, but sometimes we end up with dementia or Alzheimer's or what have you. But always ask for a second opinion, especially if it's a major back surgery, dementia. So in June of 2020, 13% of Americans reported starting an increased substance use as a way of coping with stress and emotions related to COVID-19. So during COVID, our alcohol consumption went up. I question as to whether or not it went up, or now that they're only getting it from a liquor store, and we can track it, has it gone up, or is it just where they're getting it? So it has increased, but we were able to actually get more of a good number because you had to go to the liquor store. You couldn't buy it in a restaurant until we passed that lovely little law that said, oh, you can now have alcohol delivered to your house.
I don't want none.
No.
Ain't no drunk in my life.
It's not worth it. So you can go onto the Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention and see the reports. Overdose have spiked since the onset of the pandemic. A lot of people are trying to self-medicate. They're feeling bad instead of going out to the doctor because they think that's more dangerous during the pandemic. That would be more dangerous than, oh, well, let me just take this will help me. And not knowing what medicines that they are messing with. So we have comorbidity, which is drinking and taking medications to try and resolve issues that you don't really need to. You need to go for a professional. So ending discrimination. Is it a common problem? Is discrimination a common problem?
Yeah.
Mental health and substance use disorders are among the most highly stigmatized health conditions that we have. Do y'all remember when you used to say? So we wouldn't mention the word. You had to whisper cancer. You know, couldn't say it loud. So now we have mental health, substance abuse, and nobody wants to mention that, but we need to bring it to the forefront so that we can help people. Because it's a suffering that they don't need to go through. We also do a lot of stigma. Like I said, people don't wake up one morning and say, this is what I'm going to do now. They don't dream about it at 10. You know what, I'm gonna be the biggest crackhead that I can be when I grow up. That's not their wish. But they fall into it because communities are not stepping up and saying, hey, let's go play a game outside, let's play catch, let's do this, let's get them involved in other things so that they're not watching commercials, or they're not playing games that teach them how to kill. And I don't even play them, so I don't even know what they are anymore, but when I took care of foster kids, they were pretty bad. So we're trying to change behavioral health social norms. That's basically what trying to change stigma in a community is to change the social norms. Where when you see somebody walking down the street and they're mumbling to themselves, what do y'all think? They're on the phone? They may not. I mean, if you don't know who they are, you don't. The Bluetooth as a social worker was probably one of the best tools we ever had. Because we passed them out. And they're like, we don't have a phone. I was like, it's all right, just put it in your. People started treating people who were talking instead of crossing the street and looking at them like they had the plague. They would walk by them, hey, how you doing? And keep going.
Right.
You wouldn't think that this person walking by you was talking to himself or whoever else was, you know. And they can't help that. Even with medication, they can't help it.
Right.
Some people just hear voices. So we are trying to move people who have been in long-term care facilities, those with disabilities, intellectual disabilities, our mental health disabilities that have been in long-term care, if they would like to live in the community, that's what we're helping them get to the community. But is that should be done? You've got an apartment, okay, have a nice life. Is that where we should stop? We need to make sure that if they want to go to church, they can get to the church. They know how to do the grocery shopping. Because some of these people have been in long-term care facilities since they were little, early 10, 12, 13 years. You know, they were placed for mental health and they just never came out. You have people coming out of prison that have been there for 30, 40 years and they're now being released. Think about how the world was 30, 40 years ago and being here's $200 and have a nice life. It's kind of hard. They don't have a social security card, they don't have a birth certificate, they don't have an ID. That's one of the things we're trying to change. We're also working on developing a peer support system where people who are felons or ex-felons can turn around and help those that are coming out. And even getting the ones that are in jail, learning how to be a peer support and helping the others that are coming up through the system.
You can do that. You know what, I'm gonna tell you something, when I was coming up and I got hurt when I was a little girl, they told my mama then, that I was gonna be retarded, that I wasn't be able to take care of myself, I won't be able to do this, and they said, she's gonna be legally blind. So I said to myself, I said, but I know I ain't gonna be like that. I fell on the couch when I was a good baby and I hit my head. So they just when they told mom them I'm gonna be like that and stuff like that. I ain't never been like that in my whole life. I took care of my sister's children. They'll tell you they're grown and they'll tell you I took care of them when they were babies. I took care of them. While their mom and daddy them went to work, I was their babysitter. I taught their ABCs and everything.
Okay.
And I did that and I said, they said, well, you know, I said, well, yeah. Then so they told mom and them I had something real bad. My mom and dad didn't realize that I had 2019 vision till I moved to rock. I got glaucoma now, but back then I could drive, I could do anything, but they told mom and dad I won't be able to do
Well,
none
you
of
proved
these.
them wrong.
None of that, right.
We're very happy that you proved them wrong. So how would y'all define stigma? What would your definition of stigma be?
What somebody says about somebody just because of the way they look or the way they act or walk or talk.
Treating people different
What would make you treat somebody different?
based on how they act or based on your interpretation of who that person might be.
What else? I know y'all have lots of ideas for stigma.
So when you mention the word that if somebody is mentally ill or mentally sick,
Have a mental health diagnosis?
yeah,
Mhm.
something wrong with it.
So to you, that's stigma.
Oh, yeah.
Should you try and hide those with mental health issues?
I don't think so.
No. You shouldn't try and hide a mental health diagnosis, just like we shouldn't hide diabetes.
That's right, that's true.
I can't hide that I'm allergic to cucumbers, melons. You know, those are weird things to be allergic to.
Yes. I got nieces and allergic to having greens, they have to take shots before they can eat it.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I have to, you know, when we're having potlucks or whatever, they're like, what are you allergic to? I'm like, cucumbers and melons. And they look at me like I've lost my mind. Trust me, it was very hard growing up in my family. I had to climb trees to get away from my mother because she loved watermelon and she wanted me to like it too. She even tried it at 45. I said, Mother, I'm 45 years old. I do not like watermelon. I don't like cantaloupe and I don't like honey. I don't like melon. And then I got tested and I'm allergic. So she finally left me alone.
It's kinda like my sister, she can't take insulin. I can take like, you know, like you said, you got a shot. When we was in school, she couldn't take none and because she was allergic to penicillin.
Yeah.
So,
I never was, but she was.
so let me ask you, if it's a mental disorder that you can't help, the question is, could you hide it even if you wanted?
Sometimes, yes.
Yes. I have a niece who's, got a diagnosis of bipolar. My sister and her husband decided to hide that from the family. So what does that do to the person, to the little child, who now has the diagnosis of bipolar,
But
but
can
we
she,
can't talk about it?
but I'm saying, can she hide it?
Yes, very
Some
much so.
people do.
Yeah.
So I guess the question would be, if you can hide it, and I'm just asking, if you can hide it, how then is it identified?
When you have a breakthrough, act up, what she said.
So what I'm saying, if you act up, you're not hiding it.
Well, I mean, just like anybody with alcoholism,
They can't hide it.
they can. My grandfather was a functioning alcoholic. Monday through Friday, he went to work. Worked, did a beautiful job. Friday night, he got home, and he would drink until it poured back out of him. Monday morning, he walked back into the job, and nobody knew he was an alcoholic. Never didn't touch it Monday through Friday. Friday night, it was on.
I guess what I'm saying, somebody knew it. I guess I'm not arguing it, I'm trying to identify it, because if it's something that you can hide, how then will you know it? Is the question.
How would the person that has it know?
How would anybody know it? What I'm saying is an alcoholic. Now his co-workers may not know, but somebody know that he was an habitual drinker. There's no way around it. You know, I mean, I've been around enough alcoholics that they may think they're hiding, but somebody know it. I guess I'm saying with mental health, even especially for a child, if there's a child that's contented with it, and if you can hide it, how then is there methods or something that you can do that will identify that the person's going through a mental struggle?
Maybe hide it's not the right word. We don't talk about it, we don't mention it.
Okay.
You just know that person's a little off.
They're different
They're a little different.
sometimes.
And it doesn't, and for my niece, we knew she had such a vivid imagination.
So a vivid imagination is one method.
I
I mean, I guess.
But then again, you've got artists who are.
I think that it's not a matter of hiding it, it's a matter of observation, right? And it just kind of, because at some point in time, we're all dealing with something in some way, shape, or form. And whether we turn to a substance or whatever, or we deal with have some kind of mental health situation, whatnot, I think it's not about, because I think the question is more along the lines of just kind of, how do we know that if we can, how can we check in with someone? How can we make sure that we're providing the right support, right? Because the thing about it is that somebody might be dealing with whatever kind of mental health situation that they're going through, but I think the key part is to observe the person and make sure that you're offering support whenever it's needed.
So my suggestion would be, as a community,
Right.
reach out to your neighbors. How many of y'all know your neighbors that live right next door?
I do. I know all my neighbors.
Every time I ask that question, I usually have one person that may know somebody that lives near them. My sister does not know anybody in our neighborhood. We bought a house together. She doesn't know anybody. So hey, how are you doing today? Ask people. We don't do that as a person. We don't provide when you're at the grocery store and that kid asks you, how are you doing today? What is your answer?
The standard answer is okay.
Fine.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we ask them how they're doing?
I do.
What do they say?
Sometimes not.
Nothing. Sometimes.
So try this one. How are you doing today? And you go, you know what, today's not been a really good day for me. How about you? Tell the truth.
Right.
If you're having a good day, then say, I've had a great day. Or, you know what, today work was just horrible. How is your day going? Or if you look at somebody and they are having a hard day, say, I can tell today is just, you're having a hard time. Is there anything I can do to help you?
Ms. State, in my experience, and, I'm not a professional or whatnot, but when you start observing someone at an early age, and you can almost, as a parent, identify that this person has a condition, and if that person itself, even as a teenager, is in denial that they have a condition, especially the parents in denial that that person has a condition. That person keeps doing the same thing over and over again. Sometimes, they say a child's not capable, a teen's not capable of having kleptomania. Yes, they are. That's a mental health.
So,
Kleptomania is a mental health.
yes, it is.
A child that compulsive lies for no reason is mental health. I mean,
It can be, and it cannot be. Sometimes it is just teenage behavior.
No, I'm talking
See,
about.
that's what I was asking. How can you identify, if you can't hide mental health, how then can you identify whether it's just general behavior as compared to something that can be considered as a mental health disorder?
So, I worked with therapeutic foster kids for a long time. My kids were the kids that you would hear about on the news because their parents had done something very heinous. And I wonder what happened to those children. Well, they came to our group in South Carolina, and we would put them in foster care. So I had 2 little boys that had been in foster care from 2 to 4. They're 2 years old and 4 years old. We thought they were twins. I knew one of them had schizophrenia. He was 12 years old. I knew it. Everything he did, I knew he had schizophrenia. I went to my boss. I'm like, I know this kid has schizophrenia. It had classic signs. All the signs you read about. Thank heavens they never diagnosed him with schizophrenia. Because he doesn't have it. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of damage that had been done to him. There's a lot of trauma. And so diagnosing is not what we want to do.
Right.
If you've got a child or you've got a person that's acting out, that's causing issues, you need to you kind of start at the beginning and say, okay, when this occurs, this behavior happens. Sometimes it's like putting a puzzle together. You don't have all the pieces. You just work with them and you love them and you listen. Sometimes they don't have anybody to listen to.
But see, that what you just said is what I hear a lot, where if a kid has dealt with some traumatic or, anxiety, and then we as a community may say, well, he or she has a mental health disorder. So I guess that's why I was asking the question. From your perspective, that's because they may have experienced a traumatic experience, they may, whether it's stealing, whether it's acting out, whether it's fighting, or whatever the case may be, that's not necessarily saying that it's a mental health disorder. Right, and that's where, as a community, a lot of times we hear it every time. When a kid does something, it's a mental health.
Right.
And my question has always been, how do we know it's always a mental health and not just behavior?
So if you watch news, if you watch television, there shouldn't be a soul walking on this planet that doesn't have schizophrenia, bipolar, or some kind of conduct disorder, according to Criminal Minds and the news. And they're all dangerous. They're not. People with schizophrenia are probably the largest group of mistreated people because people are afraid of them. They generally do not act out against anybody unless they feel threatened and they don't understand what's going on. We're training officers, we call them CIT officers. So if you're working with somebody and it's becoming where you need to call law enforcement, or you need help, always ask for a CIT officer, because those officers have been trained in de-escalation. They'll come, they don't have to get right back out on the road. That's their duty for that day, is to be a CIT officer. If you have a veteran who's having a mental health crisis, ask for a veteran CIT officer, because veteran speak is totally different than you and I. If you've been a veteran, you know what their lingo is totally different. I could work with those, but they would know right off the bat I never did. Never, ever served. But somebody who has served can say, hey, I feel it.
So, I have a question back with the Reverend, the pastor's talking about. So we shouldn't, I know I'm not a health professional, so I shouldn't assume that that person has any kind of mental condition. That's where.
Mental health diagnosis. That's one thing y'all need to understand. Mental health, a diagnosis of mental health is just like any other diagnosis. Diabetes. What we want to do is get away from saying they have a mental health condition, they have a mental health illness. It's a diagnosis.
I used to watch this little boy, and his daddy would bring him to my house sometimes, and this lady was, and he said every time his neighbor came and got him, so he would be crying and crying. He was trying to figure out why was he, crying like that, and the boy was scared of the woman. So when he come to my house, he was just as sweet as he could be. And they said, well, she know what she doing. She treat him right, and she don't do nothing good. So when they found out, and I kept telling him, I say, take your son to the doctor. I say, cause this lady is doing something to him to make him, be like that and everything. You know what? That lady had that little baby. She was having sex with that little baby. For real. When I told him to take her to the doctor, he came back and told me. I said, I told you. He said, you was right. I said, yeah, I told you. I said, cause around me, he was just so sweet as he could be, and we would sit there and I would, play games with him and watch
So
TV.
that child will need a lot of counseling because it'll have post-traumatic stress disorder. The child will have post-traumatic stress because now it will be and post-traumatic stress doesn't have to be from being in a car wreck, being in the war, being in 9/11. It can be sexual abuse. It can be the loss of your parents. It can be the loss of your grandparents. It can be the loss of your brother. My kids, my two boys, I was never their foster parent. I was their social worker, but they were all my kids. So when I say my kids, it's all my foster children. Whether they were HIV positive, medically fragile, therapeutic, meaning they've been really traumatized by the family. And I use the term family loosely because sometimes people who give birth to people are not parents and they're not family. So a family can be anybody that's providing safety for that person. So, the trauma we have seasonal. The seasonal just SAD. It's called SAD. It's seasonal.
With depression?
People who don't get enough sunlight in the wintertime, it's called SAD. They need more sunlight. Well, it's not only that. Seasonal could be, these two little kids that I had would tear up the school October through February. Well, it took me, when this occurred frequently, every year, October through February, they were tearing up the school. We would separate, we do IPs, we do everything trying to figure. I had to go back and research their charts, and their mother had killed their sister in 20. in October. They ended up in foster care, and so that was the traumatic event that was occurring. Yes, sir.
No, I see.
So it can be anything. But you, we want to provide love, we want to provide support, and we want to provide understanding. And a safe place for somebody to come and talk. And you know what? If you don't have the answer, I don't have answers. Say, I'm gonna find out for you. And if you're not the right person, that's okay too. But you know what? I'm with you right now. Let me find somebody who is better equipped to handle this. But I'm gonna stay right here with you. Or who helped you when you felt like this before? What support system did you have? That's all part of working with this person. So our biggest thing is just changing the negativity that we have when it comes to people who may be different than you are. You know, when you see somebody different, or we shouldn't automatically just assume there's something wrong. They just, maybe have a very eccentric way of being. And that's okay. We have those. 3 elements of stigma are prejudice, discrimination, and ignorance. To me, they're all 3 huge, because we all do all 3 of them. Whether we intend to, whether we mean to, we all have prejudice. Everybody has something they need to work on. And that's a hard battle to look at yourself and say, okay, this is my issue, not theirs, mine, and I need to work on that. So the impact of stigma, it can lead to hate, discrimination. People often feel diminished and devalued and fearful because of negative attitude in society, which society holds toward them. So homeless people, how many of us walk up to a homeless person, or a homeless person walks up to us, and we don't take 3 steps back and go, what do you want? Do we ask them, how are you? What do you need? Now, in this area, your LEMCO is Alliance, and that's, you should get some information on Alliance.
What was that term you just used?
LEMCO,
Yes.
it is the managed care, that manage the Medicaid money,
Okay.
but they also have crisis lines, and they have, I believe they have mobile crisis that can come out, so if somebody doesn't want to go to the hospital, hey, what if we call mobile crisis? And the social worker and the team will show up and work with them from home and help them get appointments set up. If they evaluate them and say, you know what, we really need to get to the hospital, they're better equipped at handling that than you or I.
What about like when you see homeless people sleeping, like downtown?
Yeah.
I got there this morning. I ride the bus every morning. And I got down to the end, I said, I know this can't be right. But one day I went out there, this man was laying on the sidewalk so far, right up under my foot, I almost tried to look down, I would step right on top of his head.
Mm.
But it just, and had it rained, and he was just stretched out like that, and the man was just stretched out, this woman just lying out, and people just sitting there looking at him like it, not trying to give him no help, just letting him lay out there, just like that.
So I had a client, and he didn't classify himself as homeless. He said he was a hobo. He felt better, safer, sleeping outside. In order to get services, I had to get him in a home. So we got him out in the woods in Charleston in a trailer. He did put a couch in there, but he lived behind the trailer. And I asked him, I said, please, when it's raining or it gets cold, come inside. Otherwise, you know, it's good. You can hang out here all day long. That was what he liked. It's not my place to say that's wrong, right?
A lot of the people that are referred to as being homeless are living on the streets because they want to.
Because society has done a number on them. And so it's better to check out than to stay in a situation that you're not safe in.
And he told me downtown one day, and he said, what's my bag for? He said, I ain't one of those. He said, 'cause I don't like them bags. He said, 'cause we go there, they take your stuff. I didn't say a word. And I waited for the bus, and I watched his bag till the bus came. And he came back and got his bag. I said, well, I got a sandwich. And so I had a sandwich, and I gave him both of them that I had. I had a bottle of water, gave him a regular bottle of water and everything.
Yeah.
I sure did.
Yes, ma'am.
So, you do help provide, homes, or living arrangement for homeless people?
So I was in South Carolina when that occurred, but yes, we do have, like, Alliance can help with housing.
Okay, after this act, I want to talk to you about a few situations and see if you can, help.
Okay.
And does it also apply for someone that has mental health as well as being homeless?
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of people?
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably 90% of the people that are homeless probably have some form of mental health diagnosis or substance use, or both. So Alliance has, if they're not part of Alliance, if they don't have Medicaid, they still will assist you, and you just call the 1-800 crisis, or the 1-800 number for Alliance, and they'll assist you. We've talked about the media and what to do about veterans, about asking for CIT officer that is a veteran. So stigma and discrimination go hand in hand, yes? It also can be how you look at yourself. If you're giving bad self-talk to yourself, what's that doing to you? If we're not our biggest champions, and what we're playing in our head and telling ourselves what's going on, what's that doing to our self-esteem, to who we are? It's tearing it down. So you're in charge of your own, as I like to say, you've got a hula hoop around you. You're responsible for everything inside that hula hoop. So how you talk to yourself, how you treat yourself, that's your responsibility. That's not mine. I'm outside that hula hoop. You can't fix me from doing the bad, making bad decisions on myself. You can help me. You can say, but you're not your responsibility. Where's your responsibility? Inside the hula hoop.
What?
Inside the hula hoop.
Oh, inside the hula hoop.
Yeah. Imagine a hula hoop around you.
Yeah,
You're just responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my analogy. We don't want to keep negative records playing in our head. So if you've got that, oh, I'm stupid. Why did I do that? That's so stupid of me. It's an act, you spilled some milk. It's okay. You're not stupid. You burned dinner. Oops. It's all right. We get to go out. Maybe you didn't want to eat that. Often people with behavioral health issues feel they must live in the shadows of for fear of stigma and discrimination. So a lot of people choose to try and hide everything because of how they've been treated. What we want to do, and it's not to say, oh, you've got a diagnosis of schizophrenia, come on in, let's sit around and talk. No, we just treat people with respect and dignity like we want to be treated. It doesn't matter whether they're homeless, whether they're, walking down the street and they have no shoes on their feet. We treat people with respect and dignity. So there's the right-based model, which is where everybody is treated with respect and dignity, and they're part of the community. So like we move people out of group homes and we put them in their own apartment, and well, wonderful, great, we've done our job. But we really haven't, because we haven't made them part of the community, and that's what we need to do. We need to get them involved and we need to listen. We did, my friend was working with somebody, and his job was to help find jobs for his clients. And his one client said, I want to sell worms. He got him a job at the grocery store. He got him a job at the car wash. He got him a job everywhere else but selling worms. That's what he wanted to do. My friend went to California, worked out there for a while. He came back. He ran into the man. He's like, what you doing? He goes, oh, I got a little booth right outside the lake where all the fishermen come, and I'm selling worms. He was happy. I'm not the one to say, no, we can't sell worms. If that's what you want and you've got a plan, let's get that plan going. It can be as simple to make somebody happy to sell worms. And those fishermen were happy too, because they got the worms. So we want to make people part of the community. And that's really all of us to work with those people, with anybody. A new member of your church comes in. How do y'all treat them? Do you walk up, say, hey, we're all going out for lunch. Would you like to join us? Or do you say, oh, glad you could come. We'll see you next Sunday, and let them go on? How do you think that person feels? But it does happen a lot in a lot of churches. It happens in a lot of areas. You're a new work person, a new coworker comes in. You've got your clique that you go out to lunch with. Do you invite the new person, or let her fend for herself or himself? We want to include everybody. Sometimes that's hard. Sometimes we don't want to, but sometimes, it's okay. New people move into the neighborhood. Go grab some cookies from the store, put them on a plate and a dolly and some handy wrap, and say, hey, I baked you some cookies. Welcome to the neighborhood. Combating stigma, it's hard work, but it's all of our responsibility. We need to reach out. We need to be willing to listen, and listen non-judgmentally, where we're not forming our answer before the person's ever through talking, because we miss a lot when we're doing that. We want to make sure that we're repeating what they said and say, hey, this is what I thought I heard you say. Is this right? So just, don't let the myths and the stories that are out there of how people are with mental health and substance use, don't let that color the way you look at people. First and foremost, that's a person. That's a human being. When you talk to somebody in a wheelchair, do you get down on their eye level, or do you stand over them? Or stand back a little bit, but you're still over them? How do you think that makes them feel? Sit down and talk to them. Get down with them. When you're talking to a little kid, if you're able to get down and talk to them, not pull up a chair. Don't get stuck in the floor. If you watch old movies or old shows, listen to how they treated mental health in those days, what they said about people, and see if some of those same terminology is still used today. When you're aware of it, when you're listened for it, it's very disturbing when they call them insane, and they're crazy, and they're, you know, what are some other, I mean, if you watch old westerns, you will hear it all. But then all of a sudden, you'll hear this shift about Dorothea Dix, because there's a Dorothea Dix campus almost in every state. And Dorothea Dix is the one who made the first mental health hospitals. Now, were they all great? No. But it was the beginning of a good situation, of helping people who needed help. So we've been talking about stigma, discrimination. We want to use first-person language. I've noticed. I see that you're distressed. We don't want to say you, because what does that do? It single them out, but it also makes you feel like you're being accused of something. You seem stressed. The other day, I was picking up Japanese for my sister and I at the restaurant, and the woman that was ringing me up, all of a sudden just started going, I'm just sick. I'm so tired. I'm just sick. And I just stood in front of her and I said, ma'am, are you okay? And she looked at me. I said, are you feeling sick or you're just tired sick? And she goes, did I say that out loud? I said, yes, ma'am, and that's quite all right. And she goes, I'm tired, because the guys in the back were arguing. She was having a day. And I said, ma'am, take 5. I'm staying right here. She goes, there's a line. I said, well, they're not getting behind. I'm right here. Nobody's coming around me. You take 5. Take a breath. And sometimes we have to do that. We have to remind ourselves that we need to take a breath. Sometimes we have to remind other people, you've got to take a breath. You need to take 5. Let's give yourself grace. I just want everybody to give each other grace. Provide them with grace, no matter what it is, right? And it helps people. It gives people, a way out sometimes. I'm just having a bad day. That's okay. I've given you some language, what to say and what not to say. I still use the word handicap because I say I got to hang my handicap sticker up in the window. It takes a while for your language to change. Person with disabilities. Not a handicapped person, but a person with disabilities. Check and see if the bathrooms are handicap accessible. Can somebody on a walker get off the toilet? Are there handrails? Go to the hospital and check out their bathrooms. Those toilets are about 2 inches off the floor. You get my mom in there, and I'm like, all right, Mom, I'm going to lift you now. And I would have to pull her up off the toilets. You would think they would be handicapped. They're not. Restaurants are not. Look around and see if a wheelchair can get through. Or will everybody have to get up and move to allow that person to get into the restaurant? If it's not handicap accessible, say, hey, can I speak to your manager? And just say, this really isn't accessible for somebody in a wheelchair. Because the one thing they don't want is attention drawn to them because they're in a wheelchair. Making an entire restaurant stand up and have to slide the tables back to roll somebody to their table, what's that going to do to that person? It's going to cause them stigma and discrimination.
When I had my stroke, I came back to work, and I got on to the bus. And the bus driver told me, "We're looking for you, 'cause, you're supposed to have made them going on. And so when I came out, I got on the
Do
bus.
it.
And this lady still there and left.
Oh,
Bus driver
just
said,
one more thing, I'm sorry, I'll take one more time.
"They don't have anything." But that's a good lady right there. And
Yeah.
they said, "Could you, anything you want, keep it ready, homemade, nothing instant, everything homemade." She just laughed and laughed at me. The man said, don't laugh at her.
Yeah,
Say, "But you don't never know what's gonna happen to your children. Everybody, what's gonna happen to them."
right.
And you figure yourself out.
So we have a recovery conference, which is for mental health and for substance use. So if you would like to attend the recovery conference, just go on and type in recovery conference 2023 or 2020. I think we're working on 2024. Please come and join us. You'll hear a lot of different stories and things. Be the change. Be the person you want and make the changes happen. Trying to think. And keep the discussion going. You just, get connected with the services that are out there and the stuff that's available. And if you have any questions, because I've kept you here too long, but it was a great discussion. Just my number's on here, give me a call. My email's on here. Y'all have any other questions? Nope, okay. I'm done. Thank you. I'm sorry,
I wanted Miss Stacy to stay here because I wanted to let her know some of the things that she has said about love and care, and we talking about it, but she probably don't know this. I was diagnosed with dual diagnosis, and also I was diagnosed as schizoaffective. And by me talking, medication, and the grace of God, I have done very well with that. You know, I give all honor to God who helped me because a lot of it did come through trauma. So what you're saying. So thank Ms. Stacy for coming out, sharing that information with us. We're gonna turn it over to our pastor.
Miss Stacy, you said your number is?
Hope for NC is a crisis line, it's hooked into 988.
It's the next to last page.
It's got the little people on it.
It's on page 15.
All right, I got it. I don't have it my glasses, but I got it right here.
I can't give you mine, because I've never seen it.
Again, thank you so much. Have mercy, have mercy. Love, support, and forgive. That again. If you do that, I think we'll be well. And who ever heard of a church that don't have any disability rail?
That's right. Don't have bathrooms. That helps the handicapped.
Mercy, wheelchair can't get to the restroom. That's a bad thing. Have mercy. We're gonna work that part out. Amen. Listen, we're not gonna hold you long tonight.